1078 Officer in need.
What's up, guys? It's Matt from the 1078 Project. Hey, if you're new to the organization, a little bit about us. The 1078 Project is a non-profit organization that's been founded and developed by law enforcement officers who have been involved in critical incidents and officer-involved shootings. Our goal at the 1078 Project is to provide mental, spiritual, and practical support to law enforcement officers as they navigate the difficult times surrounding an officer-involved shooting. With that being said, let's dive into today's episode, and I'll see you on the other side, boys. What's up, man? Welcome in. Super excited to have you.
Yeah, dude. It's good to see you.
I know. It's fantastic to see you as well. This is like one of the most surreal experiences of my life, is interviewing you rather than you interviewing me. It's just weird that it all started in the living room of your house. So how full circle. It's crazy.
I know, man. Well, just seeing you with like a mic in front of your face and the setup, it just brings me a lot of joy, man. I know the journey you've been on, like the last couple of years, and it really does bring me so much joy.
It's a lot of work, but it all pays off, and it wouldn't be possible without a bunch of people behind the scenes helping me. And you've always been one of those people that's been motivating me, pushing me to be better, and pushing me to take risk when I need to take risk, and pull back when I need to pull back. So I'm grateful. But that's enough about me. I'm excited to have you on because I think it's really important for our audience to kind of get a little bit of perspective. You're kind of that guy that I turn to when I need perspective, when things are going on in my life. And I'm like, hey man, what do I really feel about this? Or, you know, what may God have in store for me that I just don't realize, you know? So you're kind of that guy for me. And I think it's important that our audience kind of gets a little bit of that input. Because you probably listened to a couple episodes, but my goal is to kind of allow people to know you as a person before they know Jarred Dad Tired. Because Jarred Dad Tired was a little kid at some point, and went through a bunch of things that made Jarred into Jarred. So I'll kind of open the floor there if you want to tell your story and how you got to that point.
Yeah, dude. I think that probably there's a story that I remember back from my childhood. I actually don't have a ton of memories of my childhood, which I think if I went to counseling long enough, they'd probably tell me that's a problem. You know, like I probably regressed some memories on purpose. But one memory I do have is I remember playing basketball in my driveway, and I guess maybe 7, 8, 9, I don't know, somewhere in that age. I was playing basketball, and I remember picturing that my dad was sitting on the steps of our house, like our porch, and he was like coaching me shooting. So I was like totally imagining all this, like kind of playing out a scenario in my mind where I'm out playing basketball and my dad is coaching me. And the reason that sticks out to me is because my dad wasn't there. My dad left when I was 3. And so as a kid, even thinking about that, like looking back at yourself as a kid, that breaks my heart. I'm a dad of 4 now, you know? And so to imagine that a kid is like trying to conjure up in their brain that their dad's around and like their dad's present in their life, is super heartbreaking. But that memory sticks out to me because it kind of solidifies my childhood, which is a little boy really, really wanting a dad to be around. And I think that most of my life I was longing for a dude to like some guy to just say, hey man, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job. This is who you are. Yeah. And what I found in my life, I'm 37 now. What I found in my life is I spent pretty much all of my childhood trying to get somebody to say that to me, you know, whether it would be a coach. So I played sports. So having a coach tell me, you're doing a good job, I'm proud of you. If a coach said that, I felt like I could rise up to be as great as they were calling me to be. And if they didn't say that, I would just crumble. Same with teachers or even like girls, you know, when I started to get into middle school, high school, if a woman or if a girl would tell me like, you're awesome, that filled my tank. But it was just anywhere I could find somebody to be like, you're great, you're doing a good job. And I think all of that was just kind of a longing to have that void filled from being a kid.
Crazy. I can relate to that so much. Like, obviously my dad was in the picture, but there's some other things that were going on there that kind of didn't allow, you know, we were really poor and my dad was always working when he wasn't working, you know, he was involved in other things other than, you know, really being around the house. But I can relate to that so much. And like, now that you're like, I think back to like, why did I do the things that I did and why did I chase the things that I chased? And I think a lot of it comes back to that, like seeking approval
Yeah.
and that like I'd rise up if somebody told me I was doing a great job, and then I would kind of fall off if I wasn't getting that reassurance and the guidance that I felt like I needed. It's crazy.
It's crazy because I like my ceiling was as high as the person that was giving me the approval set it.
Yeah.
And like something so specific. Like I had a basketball coach one time tell me, he's like, you're the greatest player in this league. And in my mind, I just took that on as my identity, and I just played crazy. And then like the next year I had a basketball coach be like, you're trash. Like there's so much, he just put me, he set the ceiling lower, and I couldn't get past it. Like I was like stuck in the identity, whatever the man told me I was. And that's just like a crazy thought as a dad now, trying to call my kids to rise up. But I'm like, I think that was my whole childhood, dude, was just like trying to figure out who I was. It still messes with me as a 37-year-old. Like, who am I? What's my identity? What I'm supposed to be doing? Where am I good? I'm at the point now where people will write YouTube comments, and like, I have thick skin. I think I've developed thicker skin, but there's still like little boy in me that's like, oh, dang, am I not doing a good job? Do you not think I'm great? I'm trying hard. Is this okay? It's like, it's crazy how much that stuff messes with you.
Yeah, for sure. It's inherent, I think, to a certain extent. Like I think every human is kind of seeking the approval of others. It's like it's part of us. It's like we want to have approval. And I think if you're lacking little tiny things in your childhood or through your development, that the importance of that just grows and grows and grows.
Yeah.
So now not only do those things that, somebody say to you carry they carry a lot of weight, and they determine who you are and what you think of yourself. And maybe that's like related to like why we have so many kids that are, there's so many households that are missing a dad and really missing an involved dad. And maybe that's part of the reason why we have so many kids that are kind of struggling and searching for approval in all of the wrong places, which are leading them astray. But
yeah, dude, I now like have devoted my life to fatherhood stuff, and trying to help guys figure out their fatherhood journey. But I have my best friend's a counselor, and he says, all of counseling is trying to get you to forgive your parents, like to take you back to childhood and forgive your parents. Like that's all of counseling. Like,
yeah,
the people pay him hundreds and hundreds of dollars, per month. And all of it's just like trying to get you to forgive your parents. Cause it all starts in your childhood. But yeah, I think that now working with dads, like I think most of society's problems would go away if dads stuck around. And that's probably like a really dramatic statement. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts on that as an officer who's like in people's homes. But dude, how much of it would change if dads were around?
For sure. There's something unique about a kid who doesn't have a dad, just the way they respond. And sometimes it's like you can kind of be that character to them. And I'm sure if somebody would have stepped in your childhood and been like that authoritative, like demanding type of person for you, I think it probably would have been beneficial. In some cases, we see that, like we go into a house and like the kid is just missing that manly, like, I don't know what the right word is, but they're just missing that role, like that role model for them to look up to and say, this guy's forcing me and wants me to be better than what I am today. Kind of like what you explained earlier.
Yeah.
And then other times it's the exact opposite. They like resent that person so much. Like, so anybody that resembles a dad figure in their life is the enemy. And that, obviously stepping in the house is we, immediately take control, which kind of puts us in that authoritative dad role. And you see some people just can't do it, man. Like they just freak out. It's like any, shadow of a dad in their life. They have built up so much animosity and so much anger towards that they kind of lose their mind. And I think for you, that must have been a kind of difficult. I know you and your dad are on like good terms now. What was the mental leap to kind of cross that road and rekindle that connection?
Yeah. Can I give you 3 thoughts on the thing that you just described with like dads in their homes before I forget? And then I'll come back to my own dad journey. And I have to preface it by telling 3. That's how I try to remember things I'm trying to talk about. So the first one is there was a study done. They were transferring these elephants. Hang with me here. I know this sounds like crazy, but this all relates. They were transferring these elephants in South Africa from this one like national park to another national park. And they left the dads, the adult male elephants at one place because they were too big to transport. So they just took the moms and the little babies over to this other one. When they took the moms and babies over to this other national park, things went berserk, especially the teenage boy elephants. They like lost their minds. They were killing rhinos, which was like out of character. They were just incredibly bad behaviored. And so they were trying to figure out like, what do we do? Do we medicate them? How do we handle, these young teenage elephants? And all they decided to do was just bring the dads over. And within hours it settled. Like they actually could test the chemical reaction to these boys. And
Really?
And it changed just by bringing the dads back over to these boys. Immediately, the testosterone like leveled itself out within the young boys, which is crazy. You can't make like a 1-to-1 comparison to elephants and humans, but you have to wonder, like, I believe in design and creation. And I'm like,
Yeah.
there feels like there's something there.
Well, sometimes you hear cops say that a lot, and so I'm going to make you forget your second and third point, so don't forget them.
I got it.
Sometimes like cops will leave a house and will be like, dude, that kid just needs a whooping. And not that I ever think the kid actually needs a whooping, but really what I think we're trying to say is like, they're missing that male elephant that's going to like be the calm and keep everybody in line. And the teenage elephants aren't going to act up because they know that dad's there and dad's going to correct that behavior. And dude, I cannot count how many interactions that I've had like that, where I leave the house. I'm like, it's so obvious to me that because dad's not around, this kid is running amok.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, statistics prove that, right? Like the amount of people who are incarcerated that didn't have dads around is like this. The stats are, Obama actually had a dad initiative when he was president because he recognized that when dads stuck around, everything worked out for the better. Like there was less incarceration, communities had less crime, drug use went down, teen pregnancy went down, education, the way the kids participated in school went up. Like everything got better when dads just stuck around. So, I mean, that's like it's pretty easy to measure, and they've actually measured it, which is, crazy.
That's kind of why I wanted to have you on, is because I feel, my own personal feeling is that as a cop or a soldier or a first responder, you're like a damaged dad. Like you experience so much trauma throughout your entire career and the things that you see. And sometimes it makes you into the dad that you don't really want to be, right? Like
Interesting.
You either spend time, kind of dealing with your issues through alcohol or through outside of your marriage relationships, or you're always kind of trying to fill a void. And 95% of the time you're not filling it in a positive manner. Right. And being in the law enforcement community, I've seen so many guys turn their back on their families, lose, custody of their kids and all of these other things because they never really dealt with the traumas of the job. And I think for me, listening to your podcast while I'm at work, like driving around, just listening to Dad Tired, kind of puts it all in perspective for me. It's like an easy way I throw it on during a 12-hour shift. I can get through like quite a few episodes. And then, like I go home with that being at the forefront of my mind, like, hey, dude, be a better dad. Like when you get home, kiss your kids, take a second to relax, but then go spend time with them, interact with them, be intentional with your time. And the reason why I had you on is because I feel like so many dudes are missing that, and I feel like so many guys in the law enforcement world, whether they're Christian or non-Christian, they could benefit from just a lot of the things that you guys talk about on the podcast.
Dang, man. Well, that means a lot to me. And I've seen you with your kids, and I think you're doing a great job. So I think I don't know if you need any Dad Tired stuff. I think you're doing a great job, man. The other two things I was going to mention before I forget were the, dude, did I forget them? Darn it. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to forget them. Well, one of them is this, and it might be controversial for your audience because I'm assuming a lot of your audience is first responders, police officers. But they did this program in prisons where they allowed these guys in prison to do father-daughter dances once a year. So they would have to go through, they would go into the prison, this nonprofit would go into the prison, and they would have to go through, I can't remember how long it was. I want to say like 12-week program where they'd essentially have to do 12 weeks of counseling. And if they completed the 12 weeks of like group therapy, counseling, fatherhood counseling, dealing with their own wounds from their fathers, dealing with the mistakes they've made out in the real world, all that kind of stuff. If they completed it, then they were able to see their daughters one night for a daughter that in the prison. They did like a daddy-daughter dance.
That's awesome.
And the success rate of these guys that went through that program, it was like a 90+ % chance that they were not going to be reincarcerated, that they have not been reincarcerated after they went through that program and had the daddy-daughter dance. It was incredible, but it just shows like that. Even a dad's like to be a good dad, like how for them to deal with their own dad issues and then to like really take serious, like I'm going to make an impact on my child, specifically my daughters, completely changed their lives. They interviewed guys who had gone through it years later and they're still like on the right track, got good jobs, staying out of trouble. So it's really, really powerful. They did a whole documentary on it. It's like super powerful stuff.
Yeah. And I like the idea, like you're like, hey, I don't know, preface this may be controversial but I think honestly, I can say that I work with a bunch of guys that got into this job for the right reasons. And obviously there's bad plumbers, there's bad doctors, there's bad everything, there's bad cops,
Yeah.
But I'd say high 85% of guys that I know got into this. Some of us got into it to drive fast and catch bad guys, but the rest of us got into it to like really try and make a difference in our communities and make the world a better place. And I realize how silly that sounds because, we're just one police officer, but I think a lot of people wanted to do that. And I think as you go through your law enforcement career, you become cynical because you see a lot of bad things and it makes it difficult to always see the good in everything. But I hope that there's tons of programs out there. Like the last thing I want to do is to send a bunch of people to prison and have them rot away in a cell. When they could be good dads, when they could be productive members of society, when they could be making a difference and making the world, we're making their world a little bit better. So that's not, to me, it's not necessarily controversial. I think, the goal for most of us when we step into this is, I remember being a young police officer, like stepping out of the road, like, all right, I'm changing everything. Like,
Yeah.
O'Fallon's going to be a better place now, and 13 years later, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I made that big of a difference, but, I do think there are probably a couple cases where, me and the guys that I worked with have made significant impacts in individuals' lives.
I have no doubt that you have, and that there's a lot of officers that and have worked with that have. My daughter comes in. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and she comes into this office and she presses every button that she can see on my desk. And she clearly pressed my alarm clock button because I can hear my alarm clock's going off.
That wakes you up?
Can you hear it?
Yeah, like the birds that wakes you up.
Oh, no, I don't set an alarm clock on the alarm clock. I just use it for a clock. But she set the alarm clock and it's going off right now. So give me 10 seconds to go turn it off.
No, you're good, dude.
And come back. I remember the other thing I was going to say, which was I don't remember what study it was, but there's like somebody studied it and they say that there's an 800% increase in disobedience when dad's not around.
800?
800% increase, which is like, if you ask my wife right now, every time I travel, I've been traveling a lot. She's like, that checks out. Like when you leave, the kids just lose their minds.
I was talking to one of the guys I work with the other day, and he goes for military stuff all the time. And, he was telling me that his wife was getting mad that he had to keep leaving. He was going to go to this special course or whatever. He's telling me his wife was getting mad that he kept leaving because he has a young son who's like 4 years old. And like when he's around, kid's great, listens well, follows directions, very structured. He may be older than 4, I can't remember, but, does well, goes to school, listens or whatever else. And then when he leaves, the kid just loses his mind and I guess terrorizes mom. The other day, it was actually last night, I was sitting there and Kate was telling Zeke to come over to him. She's like, come here. And he's just like staring at her. And I'm like sitting right next to her. Yeah. She's like, Zeke, come here. And he's just staring at her. And she tells him like 4 times and finally goes, Zeke. And he walks right over to her. Like, he didn't even have to say, come here. Yeah. It was like he was like testing the waters.
Yeah, dude.
So bizarre.
800%. The big elephant, dude. Big elephants showed up and everything changed.
800% increase.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
When you were young, and you were growing up and dad had left, were you a kid that rebelled, or because you're like, I know you pretty well, you're an emotionally intelligent person. And I think being emotionally intelligent is what really makes successful people, honestly. But did you rebel, or how did mom keep you in line, or what led you, what kept you in line, I guess, is the question I'm asking.
I think, not to give like a super churchy answer, dude, but I think God's grace in a lot of ways kept me in line. Like, I think God had just kind of put his hand on me, and in that some ways, in that in many ways protected me a ton from just making much worse decisions or experiencing bigger consequences than I probably deserved. Just God's grace. I certainly rebelled, but I think what I had was God has given me an ability to maybe break down people's walls. I think that I've seen that in the ministry that I'm doing now. Is like most dudes, as you know, especially in your world, I did some cop and police chaplaincy stuff, so I worked with some officers, and your guys' walls are up just so high, rightly so. I mean, you've seen the worst of everybody. Doesn't matter what their background is. So it's to build somebody's trust in the police officer world is very, very hard. So I work with men primarily, and every dude's walls are up. I actually just spoke to our troops out in the West Coast. I did a conference out there with the Army, and those guys, their walls are up super, super high. And one thing I think that God has given me the ability to do by his grace is to chip away at those walls a little bit, to try to break those walls down so that we can have just more honest and raw conversations as men. But I think I use that like that's a God-given gift. He's given every person a gift. I think maybe I use that gift for my own glory, for my own like specifically maybe like trying to manipulate people or try to get them to like me, going back to what we were talking about earlier. So I wasn't using that gift to like try to make their life better or to point them to God. I was using that gift to just like, hey, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? To fill that own need. So I don't know how I got on that tangent from your question, but I think that I wasn't really rebellious. I was probably more manipulative to like have my own needs met, if that makes sense.
At what point was church always part of your life? Like as far back as you can remember, mom brought you to church?
Yeah, she started taking me when I was like 7. My dad would left when I was 3, and I remember probably at 7 years old going to church regularly. And I think probably some of that was just my mom's like desperation. No dude in the house, no man in the house to like call me up, raise me up. And so I think she just was like, I need to get my boy. I was the youngest and the only boy. She had daughters, 3. I have 3 sisters. So it was like, I think she just wanted me to be around some men that could help her out. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy because following all your stuff, it's like, you always, like even the book behind you, like My Daddy's Hero, like that whole book is based off that premise, right? That whole book is like Jesus was daddy's hero when daddy needed a hero, right? Yeah. And just hearing you talk about how going to church and like how God showed you all this grace, and then like you needed a man, and the whole time that man was like God. It was the whole time that the thing that was drawing you, or keeping you in line was God, I guess. First off, did I just steal your idea for the book? Is that how you got to it? Was it from the young Jarred that was always looking for dad?
No, I mean, I think it's essentially that like that book comes out of my daughter said the girl that's on the book is my 5-year-old daughter, Ella. We have Ella's same age. Yeah. But I remember her saying something. I heard her say to one of her friends, like in the neighborhood, like, my daddy knows everything, or my daddy can do everything. And I was like, that's awesome that she thinks that, but I know for a fact I cannot do everything. In fact, I don't know most things. I can't do most things. So I was just like, she needs someone better than me. Like, if she thinks I'm the hero, I'm going to eventually fail her. I'll lose my temper at some point. I will not be the best dad. So she needs somebody better than me. And it's just kind of my own recognition of like, dude, I'm not as great as my kids think I am. I'm not even as great as I want to be, you know, in my own life. Like I need somebody better than me. I have to submit myself. Essentially, I'm not a very good God of my own life. I'm not a good God of my own,
Yeah,
like
dude.
trying to control my own life. I'm not a good God in my family. Like my family and me, we need a better God than me because I suck at this.
Yeah, you definitely don't suck, but I can completely, I definitely picking up what you're putting down there. It's like sometimes, and I think maybe that's like some of the reason why guys always feel like, I don't know, maybe we feel like we fall short is because we are trying to be all those things, you know? So I feel like there's like that. I feel like that may be the version of toxic masculinity that actually matters.
Hmm.
You know, where you constantly feel like you have to be everything for everyone. And,
Yeah.
you know, sooner or later, you're going to realize that you can't be everything for everyone. You know,
Yeah.
you just can't. Like, it's impossible to be those things. And we actually, when Kate and I first got together, before we even got married, we went to this, like, is like a marriage group at our church. And we probably shouldn't have been in it because we weren't married. But we were pretty serious and we were thinking about getting married. So we went to this group and it was like this older couple, Angie and Steve, and they very early on in our relationship, they said, you cannot be everything that your wife wants you to be. And like the egotistical side of me was like, yeah, I can, dude. I got this figured out. Like I'm gonna be the best husband ever. You know, like I'm gonna like she can definitely find everything that she wants in me. And it was
Hmm.
almost like I was like, you mean God can provide something that I can't?
Hmm.
You know, it was like it was like an attack on my morality and like my person and like who I am. Like,
Hmm.
you mean I can't? And like through our relationship, like they set the boundary. Obviously, they explained all of that, and it made perfect sense afterwards. But that's been something in our marriage that we have like. That's always like anytime like I feel like Kate's overwhelming me with like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, or sometimes I have to stop her and be like, listen, like I can't be everything, you know, like I can't, like I want to, you know, I want to be able to fill every bit of your needs, but like you're asking too much of me right now, and there's no possibility that I'm going to be able to fill those shoes. Um, and I think that relates to kind of our kids too. You know, like what you just said. It's like if I set the standard for myself as like I need to be everything for my kids, I'm going to fall flat on my face because I can't.